when you're in pain, soothing as a springtime rain, to have a friend right in your corner. Your heart will feel a little warmer. Tender loving care, tender loving care. Each warm and friendly touch lets someone know you care so much. Tender loving care, tender loving care.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Each week on Channel 3, I'm happy to talk about this interface between Christianity and medicine. And tonight we're going to be talking about hope and hopelessness, and on the hopeless side, suicide and suicide prevention. Suicide is a medical crisis in our time. We have today, every day, about 22 of our finest veterans who have served in war and maintained our liberty and peace, killing themselves every day. If you start to think about that, that's a classroom. I'm on the Upshur County School Board, and I realized at kindergarten level, we want the classes to be about 20 children. So there's 22 persons who kill themselves every day who are veterans, who serve their country, as much as be a fresh kindergarten class killing themselves every day. So it's a crisis, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just one group of people. But I'm going to focus today on some material that the VA puts out, and I'm doing all of this for the past several weeks and then into the future, looking forward to a talk that I'll be giving, a public talk here in Buchanan, West Virginia. This will be on September the 9th. This will be held at the American Legion, again, veterans who have the American Legion Hall here in Buchanan on South Canoa Street. And it's going to be an open discussion, hour-and-a-half meeting. It's under the topic of forensics, and suicide is an important topic since, of course, killing yourself is a tragedy. It's a moral tragedy, it's a physical tragedy, it's a tragedy of the family, but it's a legal problem too. It's a forensic problem too, as we have now more suicides than we do actually traffic deaths from motor vehicle accidents. It's that great a problem in our country. So I'm going to be talking there to the American Legion, at the American Legion Hall, to the public about forensics and suicide. In preparation for that, I want to just go into this a little bit more, and I want to begin with a spiritual element too. Just as I was preparing this today, I received a letter from Billy Graham. Now, this is a solicitation letter they send out from time to time if they're looking for financial resource, but they're also telling us about what's happening in their ministry. And Billy Graham feels there is a crisis of hope in our country. And I would agree with that. And as I say, the opposite of that hope is hopelessness, and suicide is often a result of hopelessness. So I definitely see the connection. And the letter was just on time for me to talk to you. Well, anyway, Billy Graham is going to do a television presentation. He's 95 years old. He's going to be 95 in November, actually, and he's going to, on the month of his birthday, he'll be talking to the nation. They're buying TV time, and he's going to be titling that "My Hope, America," and he wants to tell us about a spiritual hope. He gives us several verses I think are apropos when we start to think about this, what type of issue we have in our country and individually. He begins by saying the Bible says we do not know how to pray as we should, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us, Romans 8:26. So he and 16,000 churches across America, about 5 local churches, by the way, joining together in this effort. And so all across America, people are praying right now, asking God to intercede and give our nation back hope. I talked last week a little bit, the suicide rate is not just in veterans, which is a tragedy, and we'll talk about that tonight, but last week we talked about the middle age, the people who are fathers and mothers who have lost their job, lost their career, lost their home. The suicide rate is very, very high in the 25 to 46 range, higher than it's ever been. So we have a tragedy coming along, and so the Billy Graham organization and many churches under this one umbrella are praying. Maybe all churches are probably praying for God to intervene. Another verse he lifts up is that we are workers together with him, 2 Corinthians 6:1. By this he means that this is not an issue that you or I or any family member can individually solve. If you are living here in Upshur County, you probably know of 10 or 12 people who have committed suicide in the last year. And it's not an individual issue that one person could have held on to that person alone, and prevented their suicide. But we can all do something together collectively, and of course get people to places where they are safe and can have help. He goes on, and I want to lift up one other verse, and then we'll talk about the VA issues. He says in Ezekiel, "For thus says the Lord God, indeed I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out." Ezekiel 34:11. Now this answered an issue for me that also came up this week. Someone was saying, well, how do we save someone, or how is someone saved? And of course, it's not us, it's not you or I or any family member who can actually save someone, but God is seeking people out, and people respond individually to God. In other words, it's not this is not a guilt thing as we talk about suicide and suicide prevention. And if you have had a loved one who's unfortunately taken their own life in the past year, while there may be guilt, wondering what else could I have done, that's not the main issue. It's an issue really of all of us being together, helping one another, building community, giving ourselves back hope, and in many cases we do that body, mind, and spirit. So all measures together. Let me talk a little about what the VA is doing, because they know they have a crisis within their ranks. And this is a program they call ACE, like the card, like the jacks and the queen and the king and the ace, ACE. So they use this to get people's attention, but also to help prompt memory. And it describes their program of suicide prevention and what families can be doing. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of things in that hour and a half. But I just want to touch on this tonight a little bit about how the VA approaches that problem, because you may be dealing with someone watching tonight who's had ideas of suicide. You yourself may be watching tonight, have had ideas of suicide, and you wonder what are the steps that you can take to step back from that crisis. Well, here are some ABCs, in this case the ACEs, the ACE steps that you can take. First of all, ask yourself the question, and of course if you have a loved one who's thinking and talking of suicide, ask them to talk about it. Are they thinking about killing themselves? Do they think they might hurt themselves? Ask directly. This is not the case where asking someone will cause them suddenly to say, oh, I need to think of suicide. No. It's just like someone has chest pain, maybe beginning to have a heart attack. Maybe they should go to the doctor for an evaluation of their hypertension or just their cardiac status. And if you say, do you have chest pain? You are not causing heart disease by asking the question. If they look discomforted to you, and you bring it up and say, are you okay? Do you have chest pain? You're not suddenly causing a heart attack. In other words, as human beings, we don't have that much power over another person's body or their mind. And so it's important to have a discussion. Ask the person, first of all, the A part of this equation. Second would be C. This is showing caring. And of course, this is fundamental. Our program is entitled Tender Loving Care. So I hope in 35 years, if nothing else, you who have watched, and I appreciate that we may have as many 750 faithful viewers, and I appreciate that, that you understand the value of caring and tender, loving care. And this is the C step, the ACE. The second step in preventing of suicide is caring. And that includes removing any means that could be used for self-harm. Not too long ago, I was involved with a veteran and their family, and was an older man, as many veterans are, and most of his loved ones, his wife, others had died and left him. He's all alone. He's living in an isolated, out in the country environment, and the family brought him for the VA for help. And we emphasized, let's get rid of all the weapons in the home, and for any self-injury. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the family members did not do that. And I'm not blaming them either. The veteran himself heard the conversation. It was a circular discussion with everyone present who needed to be present. But anyway, eventually he went home. Eventually he did take his own life with one of his weapons. So removing some of the tools is caring. If a person has guns in every room, let's at least separate the bullets from the guns. Let's put the guns in a gun case, lock it up. Let's keep the ammunition someplace else. All those common steps that we would do even for if there was a child in the home or young people in the home. There are a lot of precautions we need to take with weapons. And there are things that could be potentially used as weapons, and we need to recognize that and also take charge of those things. We need to stay calm and safe. When there's a suicidal crisis, of course, it's a major crisis, and doctors do intervene, and we are there for crisis. We help out people in trouble. ERs are there. Most of the people who are suicidal go to a doctor's office and within 6 months of their suicide. So they have sought help in one way or another. Caring can come out in various ways, but the attitude in approaching someone who may be thinking of harming themselves is to stay calm. And if someone is drowning, take a Red Cross first aid swimming lesson here. The first step is not to jump into the water with the person who's drowning, because two people will drown. The one in crisis will grab hold of the person who's there to save them, and it'll pull both people down. It's happened many times, and it's always tragic. So their steps: reach, throw, row, go. In drowning, you would reach out with a stick or something, so the person grab on that and then pull them in. Reach, throw them a rope, something they can hold on to. Row, get in a vessel like a boat and go out to them. Don't get in the water with them, but then let them hold on to the boat, and then they can be saved. Finally, the fourth step, go. But it's very important to emphasize being calm and staying safe ourselves if we're trying to help someone else. And then actively listen to the person. Again, we have some studies, and there's going to be a number across your screen, by the way. This is the VA Suicide Prevention Hotline. Why are there hotlines like this? And that number is available, 1-800-273-8255. 8255 is TALK, the word TALK. Why are there hotlines like this where people can talk about their problem? Well, very simply, the studies have shown that if a person will engage in a conversation with someone else for as little as 15 minutes, they will change their own mind about their suicide. People are very, very ambivalent about taking their own life. They may be at the end of their rope. They may feel hopeless. They may have overwhelming medical crisis, economic crisis, feel guilty about something, whatever it is, but they're still ambivalent about giving up their life. And so it's worthwhile talking to people and of course, listening to people as they describe what the crisis is in their own life. So that's the C part. The ACE, ACE, easy to remember, is escort the veteran, in this case, or the patient, the family member. No, don't leave the person alone. Escort them to the nearest emergency room or medical clinic. And of course, again, hotlines can be called. 911 can be called. This is interesting. The couple years ago, I was asked to speak to the 911 folks in West Virginia. They were having their special training session in Charleston, West Virginia, and they wanted a session on suicide, a big issue for anyone who takes 911 calls in our county or every county in the state. And they need to, our 911 employees are trained to deal with suicidal calls. And so I was part of the training that year, and I was happy to do that. And just in my preparation for this, I was, I joked with him in the beginning after I found this out, but I had I went to a suicide hotline number, and I listened to it. I rang it up, and I listened to what the voice on the other side is saying. And the very first thing that they were saying is, if this is a crisis of suicide, a medical crisis, call 911. So here I am joking in a sense with the folks and saying, well, everyone out there on these crisis lines expect you, the 911 people, to know the answer. And of course they are trained, but we all want to get more training, more practice, and that's what we do in many cases. But so get someone to help, call a helpline. So let's talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to go not anymore with that part of the VA prescription for treatment, but a safety plan quick guideline. As I say, I'm going to give out a lot of resources on September the 9th to the forensics groups that's there, touch on a lot of points, and I'm giving you a tease here, I guess, tonight, some things that are out there that are important to know. You can also call up the VA and get copies of any of this stuff. I would imagine you could go to the American Legion, the VFW Hall, places like that, and also get access to this information. But anyway, they have a very excellent safety plan, quick guide that we all need to think about. And there are 6 steps in their process of developing a safety plan. Like any other safety plan, this is to be worked out with the family, everyone involved, over time. If you live in a house with 2 floors, you should have a safety plan for how to get out of a window or get off the 2nd floor to get to safety. If you have babies in the home, you need to have a safety plan for what to do about the electrical sockets. This type of thing. This is a safety plan to prevent suicide. So the first thing is to ask yourself, and everyone needs to ask themselves, well, if we have a safety plan, is it going to be easy to follow? Is it going to be common sense? Is it going to make sense? When there is a crisis, and we seem to be having more and more crises every day, particularly that will bring people to the brink of suicide, there's more and more hopelessness. And again, there are people like Billy Graham, who's going to talk to America in November about hope. And he feels a call to do that, 95 years old, by the way, and remarkable that he's going to do this, but he feels a spiritual call to do this, and hope is certainly needed. But if there is a hopeless situation, the first question to ask ourselves is, will the safety plan be followed? In other words, it has to be pretty commonsensical and pretty plain to everyone before you go very far in it. I remember when I was in medical school, one of the first lectures was never give any treatment plan to a patient that they cannot easily carry out. And they used an example of an old woman who had congestive heart failure, who would have trouble climbing stairs, and tell her that she should not climb stairs. That's not a good plan and in this case, this particular patient, because she was very poor. The cheapest apartment in her town was on the 5th floor of an old building, and that's where she lived. So the plan to tell her not to climb steps is no plan at all, because she is going to climb steps. She's going to climb steps every day until she dies. So she needs another plan, another way to deal with her heart in this case. And if people are setting up a safety plan, it has to make sense to everyone. So given that it is making sense or that it may not make sense, What is the second step? Well, then ask what you can do on your own if you become suicidal again. So a person may have been there, may have been right to the edge, and what steps can you take to step back from that edge? And so some collaboration. What I usually tell folks, and by way of collaboration, is we need to have at least 3 people in our life that we can relate to at any time, day or night. A lot of people are totally isolated, and that's a shame, and that does lead to suicide. In Vietnam, there were almost 60,000 Americans who died. Since Vietnam, there have been about 180,000 veterans who have killed themselves. You see the odds-on ratio, multiple time from combat death, suicide death. And part of the issue in Vietnam was simply that soldiers went in and fought an individual war. They had a date they went into country, they had a date they came out of country. They didn't go in with buddies, they didn't go with units. Now in Iraq and Afghanistan, people go in as units and they come back out as units. I was talking to a Marine yesterday, and in his cycles, it's about 7 months into Afghanistan, some time out of Afghanistan, 7 more months into Afghanistan, and so forth. But they always go as units. And but isolation is going to set up a situation for suicide. So one of the things is collaboration. Then everyone needs to have about 3 people, have a buddy system. The reason I say 3, because I go back to the Bible, I go back to the Wisdom of Solomon, I go to Ecclesiastes, and the statement there says a 3-fold cord is not easily broken. And I think about that, and it makes sense to me. If you have a single string, take a kite string or something like this, and you snap it, you're going to break it. If you entwine it with 2 kite strings, you still may break it. I have tried it. And then if you take a simple kite string, not a strong string, and you get 3 of them together and entwine them and pull them, you cannot snap them and break them. So I believe the Wisdom of Solomon by saying the 3-fold cord is not easily broken, and then by way of extrapolation on that if we have 3 people in our life that we can turn to at any time, we're likely to have a safety net that will help us if we get into a major crisis. A third point to make is that social contacts may distract the crisis. Okay, so we need to go to safe places. There have been studies in our country, and it's remarkable. I think if I were wanting to live long, which I hope to live long, God willing, and as we say, if the creek doesn't rise, but if I go to church, I think that's a part of my routine of life. And there have been studies that show that people who worship 2 or more times a week, so this obviously could be like a Sunday worship, a Wednesday night worship, or however people may do that, but 2 or more times a week live on average about 10 years longer than people who don't do that. Now, outside that equation is we're not talking about Baptist or Methodist or even Jewish or Muslim or Christian, but there's something about that act of worship or the organization in one's life where they go to, if you will, a safe place, a sanctuary. A church is sometimes where we worship is a sanctuary, it's called, but go to a safe place several times a week, and it's going to be healthy for people, and it'll help them move back from an edge. Now, I believe the church is a good place to go, but this is a secular talk in a way, and the VA is a secular organization. So if they want to say coffee shop, then if you can go out and fellowship every morning at Hardee's, say in Buchanan, then you're going to be healthier for doing that. And there are a group of men who do that, I'm aware of. Or you can figure out your own social network, but if you do that on a regular basis, it's going to help you in a time of crisis. A fourth step would be family members or friends who may offer help. And obviously we have some people that we trust more than others, and this fourth step entails for a person who knows they have these suicidal thoughts, have a depression, have an anxiety, have a crisis, actually approaching someone else and saying, I need to make an agreement with you to talk with you more. I want to be able to talk with you in crisis. I want your help. Of course, it could be going to a doctor and saying, doctor, I am coming in for a routine appointment. Right now I feel pretty healthy, but I want to stay healthy. and I want to set up some guidelines so I can stay healthy. A routine physical every year, some basic laboratory work. I want to be able to talk about my mental health, how to deal with some ongoing stresses in my life. Exercise, rest, diet, things that we all want to do. And if someone's asking for a plan like that, they need to go to someone they can trust and work that out. And we have an example here of several plans like that. Role playing is also very important. When we do our classes, we often role play and have people sit in two chairs. They're back to back. They're not facing each other, so they could be on a telephone or they could be outside a room talking one to another, even writing on a computer, something like this. But they're relating to one another, and then they talk back and forth, and then the folks around them, watching this scenario, then decide if they have handled a mock crisis in a good way. So it helps to do some practice for things like this, rehearsal. We had a wonderful community program in our town, the community theater this year, and I'm sure there were hours and hours and hours of rehearsal to make that work. But the actors, actresses, down to the children, all the way through, were excellent and did a wonderful job, and it showed, and I believe it's practice that makes it work. Professions and agencies that may help, of course, a fifth step, getting in touch with a mental health professional. When the step there was advised in the ACE process, taking someone by the hand and taking them to the doctor, taking them to the ER, it's a very important step. I always appreciate it when I'm doctoring and a family member comes with someone. Now, there may be a time in the appointment when I and the patient should be alone and everyone else out of the room. There may be things that need to be said that the person feels comfortable only telling a doctor. And I understand that. I'm sure family members understand that. But the fact is that if someone's showing enough caring and concern to come with someone, it helps out a lot. And of course, it's very necessary to get the help that people need. Finally, making the environment safe. We can hardly emphasize this enough. As we talked about this, I've seen suicides occur because firearms were not taken away from the home. And those things, that's always a crisis. If a person is demented and getting older, the treatment plan may mean taking away the car keys. Don't let them drive. Don't let them drive until they kill a pedestrian. You see what we're saying. Making the environment safe is very important in treatment plans. A lot of efforts are low lethality efforts. People overdose. And of course, we shouldn't keep old medicines around. Fortunately now, I think it's the sheriff of our county, down at the courthouse at least, that receives medicine a couple times a year. If you have a loved one who's passed away or someone who's been very ill and now they're well and they have this medicine cabinet of old medicines, there are proper ways to dispose of those. You can take them to the hospital, take them to the pharmacy, but you can also turn them into the sheriff. And we don't want to put them in the water supply or where it will get back into, say, innocent people taking medicine that may make them toxic and may lead them down the road to problems. Of course, sometimes people, and many suicides, homicides, occur with people, as the autopsy is done, the person has been drinking alcohol or taking other drugs. And I have had many people tell me the only thing they can control with drinking is their first drink. And so, of course, if that's the issue, then they need to take away all the bottles and all the drugs of abuse out of their environment. Well, there's much more that we could say, and I intend to say a lot at the Forensics Conference on Suicide at the American Legion, September the 9th, coming up, about 6 weeks away. But I wanted to talk a little bit tonight, continue our dialogue, because in part this letter I got today from Billy Graham that he's going to be talking to the nation about hope. And one of the big issues in America is hopelessness, and we do have an epidemic of suicide. Well, until the next time, this is Dr. Greenbrier Allman thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Special thanks to Channel 3 for this opportunity to come your way each week. See you next week.
Stories of a West Virginia Doctor, written by Dr. Harold D. Allman. a collection of 55 short stories about his experience as a small-town doctor in central West Virginia. And Tender Loving Care, Stories from a West Virginia Doctor, Volume 2, written by Dr. Greenbrier Allman, using videotapes to write 70 additional stories of his father's very colorful life as a small-town doctor. They can be found for purchase at Amazon.com and most local bookstores. Tune into Channel 3 Buckhannon for Tender Loving Care with Dr. Greenbrier Allman, where he talks about the connection between Christianity and medicine.